Lena Carter thought she married into a dream. Omar Al-Saif thought he married perfection. But by the end of their wedding night, one was dead, and the other's billion-dollar empire was built on blood and lies. The Crime Scene presents a new page of crime, a new mystery, a new shock case. Dubai looked like a dream dipped in gold when Lena Carter stepped off the plane that night. The air was warm, rich with perfume and power, and she felt like she was walking straight into the life she'd always wanted. At 26, she'd built her image from scratch: filters, sponsorships, designer tags, and a $1 million smile that could sell anything. But what she really wanted wasn't money. It was security. It was status. And she found both in Omar Al-Saif, a man who could buy silence, loyalty, or an entire skyline with a single phone call. He was everything she'd ever pretended to have: handsome, untouchable, a billionaire whose name carried more weight than gold. Their romance started fast, too fast, like fire on gasoline. One night at a yacht party led to luxury trips, diamond gifts, and the kind of attention Lena craved. Everyone thought she'd hit the jackpot, but no one knew how badly she was gambling. Because buried deep in her flawless image was a secret that could destroy everything she was building. She was HIV positive. She told herself it didn't matter, that the meds kept her safe, that Omar would never find out. But deep down, she knew Dubai wasn't a place for secrets like hers. It was a world built on appearances, where cracks got covered with gold, and truth could get you buried. Still, she played her part, smiling for cameras, flaunting her new billionaire romance, and ignoring the quiet panic that crept in every time Omar held her hand. As her follower count climbed and her name started trending, she convinced herself this was her happy ending. But somewhere between the flash of cameras and the glitter of diamonds, the line between fantasy and danger had already started to blur. The wedding looked like something out of a movie, the kind people scroll past online and assume must be fake. Omar had shut down an entire island just for the celebration, importing rare white orchids from Thailand and gold-plated tableware from Milan. The guest list was stacked with influencers, business moguls, and royal relatives, each one trying to outshine the next. Lena walked down the aisle in a custom gown worth more than most people's homes, her diamond tiara catching every beam of light in the hall. The cameras loved her. Every step, every smile, every flicker of her eyes screamed perfection. But behind the shimmer was tension so sharp it could cut through glass. Zara Malik, her best friend since college, stood by her side dressed in champagne silk, trying to keep her hands from shaking. She knew what Lena was hiding, the thing that could turn the dream into a disaster. Omar, on the other hand, seemed calm, too calm. His charm never cracked, but there was something in his gaze that felt colder than usual, like he already knew something he wasn't supposed to. Dr. Faisal Rahman watched from the edge of the crowd, his face unreadable, though his mind was racing. He'd been the one to handle the couple's medical clearances, the one who saw the report that should have stayed buried. The moment Lena and Omar kissed, the applause roared like thunder, but Faisal's stomach sank. Something in that moment felt wrong, almost cursed. Later that night, under the fireworks and champagne toasts, Omar's smile looked tighter, his hand gripping hers just a little too hard. Lena brushed it off as nerves, but Zara noticed the look, half rage, half heartbreak. The perfect wedding had gone off without a hitch, but the cracks were already forming beneath the glitter. The night after the wedding, the world outside was celebrating, but inside the penthouse, silence pressed heavy against the walls. The suite was unreal, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Dubai skyline, champagne still bubbling in untouched glasses, and Lena's white gown draped across the bed like a ghost. She felt lightheaded, dizzy from exhaustion and adrenaline, telling herself it was all part of the fairy tale. She had made it, married to one of the richest men in the Middle East, her future carved in gold. But she didn't notice the way Omar had gone quiet, his eyes distant and dark as he poured himself another drink. He'd received something hours before the ceremony. An envelope slipped discreetly into his hands by Dr. Faisal. Inside was a confidential report stamped with Lena's name, showing her HIV-positive status. At first, Omar didn't believe it. Then anger settled in, slow and poisonous. He smiled through the ceremony, kissed her hand, posed for pictures, all while his mind twisted with betrayal. In his world, reputation was everything. A stain like that, one drop of scandal, could ruin generations. He felt mocked, played by a woman he thought he owned. Lena, completely unaware, floated through the night in blissful ignorance, replaying the evening in her mind like a highlight reel. She thought Omar's quietness was fatigue, that he was just overwhelmed by the day. She didn't know he'd already made up his mind to confront her, not with words, but with fury. When he finally excused himself to take a call, he stared at the skyline for a long time, gripping the report until his knuckles turned white. Every illusion of love shattered inside him that moment. And as Lena brushed out her hair, humming softly to herself, she had no idea that her secret had already turned her wedding night into a death sentence. When the door to the penthouse clicked shut, the fairy tale officially died. The night air outside was calm, but inside that glass fortress, something darker took hold. Omar stood near the window, his reflection blending into the glittering skyline, a drink in his hand and rage boiling just beneath the surface. To him, every smile Lena had given, every touch, every "I love you," replayed like a cruel joke. He felt deceived, humiliated, poisoned by a woman he thought was perfect. The medical report still sat on the dresser, its words burning into his skull. Lena, still in her bridal lingerie, noticed the coldness in his eyes but brushed it off as nerves. She tried to laugh, to lighten the mood, but his silence grew heavier, suffocating the room. The music from the ballroom below echoed faintly through the floor, muffled by luxury. Then, without warning, Omar snapped. It was like a storm breaking free. No words, no warning, just violence unleashed. He grabbed her, shouting accusations she couldn't even process, his anger hitting harder with every second. She tried to fight back, to reason with him, but his fury was blind. Glass shattered, furniture cracked, her scream dissolved into the walls. Minutes later, the suite was silent again except for the sound of heavy breathing and the slow drip of spilled champagne. Lena's body lay motionless beside the bed, her wedding veil tangled around her arm, her skin marked by the brutality of the man who once promised forever. Omar stood over her, chest heaving, staring at what he'd done as reality slowly crept back in. Panic hit, cold and sharp. He wiped his hands, straightened his shirt, and called Dr. Faisal with a steady voice, claiming his wife had collapsed. But deep down, he knew no doctor could fix what he'd just destroyed. By the time the sun rose over the city, the cover-up machine was already in motion. Omar's private security sealed off the entire penthouse floor before the police could even arrive. His team moved with mechanical precision, phones confiscated, surveillance drives pulled, staff threatened into silence. Within an hour, every trace of what had really happened was scrubbed clean. Dr. Faisal showed up pale and shaken, forced to sign off on a forged death certificate that labeled Lena's cause of death as cardiac arrest due to exhaustion. He wanted to tell the truth, but one look from Omar's head of security shut him up fast. Money changed hands in envelopes thicker than medical files, and suddenly the police had no further questions. Zara Malik found out through the news that morning, her phone lighting up with headlines of tragedy and sympathy posts from influencers. The official story painted Lena as the exhausted bride who tragically died after her dream wedding. But Zara knew better. The night before, Lena had texted her a voice note, nervous, scared, talking about how Omar had been acting strange. That message was deleted remotely hours later, replaced by an error screen. When Zara tried to reach Omar, his assistant told her Lena's body was being flown back to the States per family request, though no one in Lena's family had been contacted. Behind the glamorized headlines, whispers started spreading in Dubai's elite circles. Rumors of bruises, blood, and a furious husband who'd been betrayed. But no one dared to speak openly. Omar's lawyers worked overtime, reshaping reality with press statements and NDAs. Dr. Faisal started drinking heavily, haunted by the secret he'd helped bury. Every night he'd replay the scene in his mind, the body, the silence, the lie, and realize the truth wasn't covered up. It was just temporarily buried under money, fear, and power. A week after the funeral, Dubai's skyline still glowed like nothing had happened, but the illusion was cracking from the inside. Dr. Faisal Rahman hadn't slept in days, his conscience clawing at him like a ghost. He'd been part of Omar's world long enough to know how fast people vanished when they stopped following orders. Yet this time, the guilt was louder than fear. One morning, an anonymous envelope appeared at his doorstep. Inside was a small USB drive and a note that read only 3 words, "You know why." His hands trembled as he plugged it into his laptop. The files contained security footage from the night of the wedding, deleted clips that showed Omar entering the suite, drunk and furious, then the sound of glass shattering, a woman's scream, and silence. Faisal felt his stomach drop. Someone had kept proof. He copied the files and drove straight to Detective Kareem Al-Haddad, a man with a reputation for chasing truth even when it led straight into fire. Kareem promised protection, but deep down, Faisal knew that wasn't real. 2 nights later, as he was leaving his clinic, a black SUV followed him onto the highway. The next morning, the news reported a fatal car accident involving Dr. Faisal. The police called it a tragedy. Kareem didn't buy it. He started digging quietly, pulling hospital logs, flight records, and financial transfers. Meanwhile, Zara Malik went into hiding after receiving a threatening message that simply read, "Stay quiet, or you'll join her." She packed a single suitcase and vanished, leaving behind everything except a copy of the video. The world thought the story was buried, but underneath the polished glass towers and luxury cars, the truth was starting to rot, and the smell was getting too strong for even Omar's money to cover up. 3 months later, the secret Omar thought he'd buried came back like a ghost that refused to stay down. It started with a leak, an anonymous upload that hit the internet at 3 a.m. The video showed everything: the hotel hallway, Omar stumbling and drunk, the sounds of a struggle, and then the chilling silence that followed. Within hours, the clip went viral, ripping through social media like wildfire. News outlets from New York to London plastered the headline, "Dubai bride beaten to death by billionaire husband." The story that his lawyers had spent millions to bury was now public property. Outrage exploded across the globe. Activists demanded justice, and Dubai's pristine image of luxury started to crack under global scrutiny. Omar's empire collapsed overnight. Business partners backed out, investors fled, and his family name became poison. The authorities, cornered by the pressure, had no choice but to reopen the case. Detectives raided Omar's mansion, finding blood-stained fragments of the original wedding dress hidden in a storage chest. He was arrested at the private terminal of the Dubai International Airport, minutes before boarding his jet to Switzerland. In court, the man who once ruled everything sat silent, his arrogance stripped away, eyes hollow and dark. The prosecution laid out every lie, every bribe, every cover-up, while the world watched. The verdict came fast: guilty of murder, obstruction, and tampering with evidence. Lena Carter's story became more than a scandal. It became a warning, a symbol of how even the most glamorous lives can hide the ugliest truths. Zara Malik disappeared completely, rumored to be living under a new name somewhere in Europe, the woman who had leaked the truth but refused the fame. In the end, Lena wasn't just another social media tragedy. She was the reminder that no secret stays buried forever, no matter how rich or powerful you are.